Hi, this is the video recording for our charts and graphs class for today. We're going to be talking about political cartoons, the segment is called. But I want to say something about that term first. Political cartoons, I think, should more correctly be called editorial cartoons. So think about this. Every newspaper, today we think of newspapers as giving us facts about things. But a couple hundred years ago, at least certainly during, for example, during the American Revolution and, all over Europe at that time also, newspapers were designed to be ways for people who own the newspaper to express their opinions. So we had lots of different newspapers. There were lots of different newspapers expressing the political, generally, or social viewpoint of the person who owned the newspaper. So over the last couple of centuries, though, we've come more and more toward the idea that a newspaper should be factual, not be opinion. But every newspaper has a place in it, has a section in it, where people, either the people who own the paper or the editors of the paper, can express their opinions. And these are called things like editorial pages, or sometimes they're called opinion, the opinion section, or they're called something like commentary, right? So they're called something that alerts us as the readers that this is not part of the newspaper where what's being said is a factual report of events, but where people are expressing their opinions. Sometimes the editors, they're the people who decide what goes in a newspaper, what doesn't, or the owners, or different commentators that work for the paper. So political cartoons come out of this idea of expressing an opinion. So, but that opinion, a political cartoon expresses an opinion, but that opinion is not just on politics. That opinion could be about politics, in other words, what's going on in the government. It could be about society, like things that are going on in the world around us, in society, social issues. It could be about economics, which is what is happening in terms of money in the world. So they can be, the people who are doing the cartoons can be expressing opinions about not just politics, which would make them political cartoons, but about social issues, economics, anything else that's going on in the world. All right? So any events in the world that the cartoonist wants to express an opinion about. So the cartoonist uses some particular tools in the cartoons, and the cartoons then are meant, the purpose of the cartoons is to express an opinion about something that's going on in the world, some issue that is involving us in the world. So what are the tools that the cartoonists use? First of all, they use caricature, caricatures. Caricatures are exaggerated drawings. So, for example, if a political figure has a kind of a big chin or a big forehead, the caricature exaggerates that. Maybe you've gone to a fair or on a boardwalk somewhere where somebody draws caricatures and they exaggerate features of a person that they're drawing a picture of. Well, cartoonists typically use caricatures of the people that are shown in their cartoons. They use symbols. They use items to symbolize something else or to stand for something else. In order to use those symbols, sometimes they use labels. So they label the symbols so that we know more securely what the symbol is supposed to stand for. Or they use captions. So sentences at the bottom of the cartoon or somewhere at the top of the cartoon that help express an opinion about the cartoon. Sometimes cartoons have titles, but many times they don't. So we're going to take a look at some cartoons and see what we can learn about these cartoons and how they're used. All right? So we're going to look first at page 74. Page 74. On page 74, we see, let me put this out of the way. On page 74, we have this cartoon here. Right? Do you see this cartoon there? All right, now I want you to notice, it's not here on my copy, but on your copy, down at the bottom, down below the bottom of the picture, it says The Philanthropist, a 1930 Herb Bloch cartoon, copyright the Herb Bloch Foundation. Now, that is a citation. A citation is a note about where something came from. A note about where something came from. So that just means that this cartoon, when it was first published, was in a newspaper somewhere, and then later on, this group collected it or has the rights to it. And so that information down at the bottom would not have been in the cartoon when we first saw it. But also, not here on my copy, but on your copy, there's a title at the top that says The Philanthropist. The Philanthropist. So a philanthropist is somebody who does good things for society. Philo is a Greek root that means love. Anthro or anthropo is a Greek root that means of humans or of mankind. So a philanthropist is a lover of humanity, a lover of mankind, one who does good things for them. So today philanthropists, like build hospitals, or they build schools, or they build museums or libraries, things that help society. Or they give money, right? Bill Gates, for example, is a huge philanthropist today. Now, so let's see what we see in this picture. Now, there isn't much that is labeled. We just have this one picture sign here that says, help the unemployed, apples 5%. Now, one of the things that we might have noticed in the caption is that this was published originally in 1930. So maybe we know that in 1930, the United States and most of the world was going through what's called the Great Depression. And many, many, many people lost their jobs and had no work. So if today, when we look at this cartoon, we don't necessarily recognize the symbols that the writer or the artist is using in here. But one of the symbols is this hat. See this hat? That's what's called a top hat. A top hat. And in the 30s and the 40s, the top hats were worn, or maybe 20s and 30s, I'm not sure. Top hats were worn by rich men and politicians and other people in power. So to have this guy wearing this top hat, it tells us that he's a rich guy. There's some other things about him. This cane that he's carrying. Today, if somebody were carrying a cane, we would think that he needs help walking. But in the 1930s, that would have been a fashion statement, right? A walking cane. He also has these things on his shoes, these little leather pieces over the tops of his shoes that are called spats. Spats. Spats were a fashionable thing that wealthy men wore, okay? So we know from these indicators here, or we would have known when we were reading this cartoon in the 1930s, that that's a rich guy. Okay, we're going to stop the video, come back in another video and continue, all right?